Greetings and welcome back to Doctor Who Revisited, my ongoing series where I rewatch and review all the episodes of Doctor Who, starting from 1963 all the way up to 2022. And this next one actually might be my favorite serial from season 1 of Doctor Who, The Keys of Marinus. Sort of slightly the first episode of the Doctor Who that doesn't immediately follow up what happened in the previous episodes. Obviously, all the other serials in the season so far sort of merge into one another, but this one is actually the first one where there's actually a legitimate break at the end of the previous serial Marco Polo and the beginning of this one with the Sea of Death, not to be confused with the Dead Sea. That's a completely different sea with death in the name. But overall, like I said, it's one of my favorites in this season. Might be my number one favorite. And it's another great, wonderful addition to the Doctor Who pantheon from the late, great Terry Nation. And actually a bit of a rarity for Terry Nation, a Doctor Who story that doesn't revolve around the Daleks. Actually, there are no Daleks whatsoever in this episode. Now, obviously, again, with further Doctor Who lore, yes, some could point to say that the Cybermen have originated on Marinus, among other different worlds that they potentially could have originated from. We're not going to get into that one. All I'm going to talk about right now is the story, The Keys of Marinus in and of itself. So, first off, I like the use of the miniature sets. I think this is actually the first time we actually get to see something like that put on Doctor Who, like a miniature TARDIS landing on a miniature scaled down version of the glass beach with the acid sea, which then transitions into the TARDIS crew coming out of the TARDIS. Now that was a really nice one. I like that edition, and just the creative mind of Terry Nation is just going on a rampage all throughout the 6 parts of this 6-part serial. It just, again, just like with the Daleks, it does not stop. There's no end to that man's creative genius, and it just the world building and the lore that, once again, just like with the Daleks, you get that pretty quickly, but it doesn't overwhelm the viewer. You never once feel, at least that's the way I feel about it, you never once feel like you're lost with all this story and lore and world building. You get the Acid Sea, which, again, brilliant idea for a setting for a Doctor Who planet. You get introduced to the Vords pretty quickly. Terry Nation wastes no time letting you know who these guys are and the fact that they are the bad guys. And I love the little scene where one of them tries to kill Arbitan and Susan, and they just tricked him into the turning wall and makes him fall right into the acid sea. And yes, I get it. It's low budget. You can kind of see that they just dropped a little paper mache Ford into a pail of water. I get it. The budget does show. That's the way they made this TV show back in the 60s. Honestly, it really doesn't bother me. You get the point. It gets the point across that they just dropped the guy into the sea of acid. That's really all I needed from that episode, from that scene at least. The low budgetness of Doctor Who never once bothered me, even in the modern era of the show. Well, that's beside the point. You get introduced to the story of Marinus. You get introduced to the way the society used to work on this planet, all the different cities. You get all that information dropped on you pretty fast. But again, it's not overwhelming. It's not confusing, and you automatically know exactly what the mission's going to be. It becomes like the Infinity Gauntlet storyline well over a decade before Thanos was even a thing. Like, well over a decade before Thanos as a character even existed. So there. So yeah, it basically just becomes a treasure hunting adventure across different sections of the planet. And honestly, I'm all for it. This is one of those stories that really highlights the Hartnell era as a whole, where even though every single serial was split into several different parts, every part of each serial was unique in its own unique way. Yeah, they had different settings, different characters, different locations, different story plot to them, as opposed to being part of a much larger story. And this story, more than most, really exemplifies that. The first one is on the main city with the acid sea and the glass sand. Then there's the second one with those brains and glass jars and the mind-boggling adventures. Then there's another one in the jungle. Then there's another one in the snowy area with the wolves and the snow soldiers. And then there's another one in the city. And then it sort of continues on with the city and the trial and everything, and finishes off with, back where we started, the conclusion to the story that we saw several episodes prior. And like I said, each one of those 6 different parts is unique in its own way, and that's another one of the things that Terry Nation stories do very well. Just 25 minutes of an episode, but there's just so much world building and so much lore and character development. And even though you don't really get to explore every single corner of the world that Terry Nation is creating in front of you, you get enough of it to really get engaged in the story. And the story itself, once again, going way over budget for the show at the time, but still manages to create a mostly believable world for the characters to walk around in and interact with. It's got great villains, really good action in it, really good character. I love what they did with Barbara in the second episode. Barbara, for a lot of times, in Doctor Who specifically, the female characters really get the short end of the stick. They really become just the damsel in distress type archetype, and they have to wait for either the Doctor or another one of the male characters to rescue them. And yes, it does technically happen in the third part of the serial, but actually in the second part of the serial, it's really Barbara who just is the one sane person out of the group and actually saves everyone, even dealing with a mind-wiped Ian who tries to strangle her. And it was all Barbara. Barbara really does shine in this story. In fact, Barbara and Ian is one of their better stories together, both separately and both together as a couple. Not suggesting that they were a couple at this point, but as a duo, I should say, because they did join the TARDIS pretty much at the same time, and they have relatively the same story arcs, especially exemplified with the two of them in the Screaming Jungle. There's some more stuff to do with Barbara, with the Trapper, and Ian with Altos out in the snow area. There's a little less for Susan to do in this episode, which really is just a main problem with that character in her Doctor Who appearances. She really didn't have that much to do other than just scream and cry a lot. It was really mostly Barbara and Ian that really carried the show, and the Doctor. Ian, Barbara, and the Doctor that were really the heart and soul of the show at the time. And I know that there are lots of Susan fans out there. I sadly am not one of them. I never really liked the character of Susan from the get-go. And yes, I do get teary-eyed whenever the Doctor has to say goodbye to her, which we'll get to that episode when we get to it. And it's always fun to see her coming back, but when she was on the show, just she really hurt my ears a lot of the time. And I'm sorry that I have to say that, but I mean, I gotta be honest. And she really did fall into that screamer category, especially in this episode. She really didn't contribute much beyond just being the girl that screams a lot, especially in the fourth part of the serial. And the final 2 parts of the serial are really, really good. I liked the courtroom drama aspect of it. I loved the Law and Order type mystery of it. And obviously, I loved the fact that the Doctor immediately knew where the final key was from the start, but he chose not to say anything because it wouldn't have contributed to the trial. the case he was trying to present to defend Ian. And we really get to see the Doctor's brains really put on display here, trying to go through that trial and actually really helping his friend. A couple of episodes ago, he couldn't care less what happened to Barbara and Ian. He only really cared what happens to him and his granddaughter. And here we see him actually actively trying to defend his friend, his traveling companion, which is just great. I love the character development, the journey that all these characters were on for the last couple of episodes. And I really think that the two-part bottle episode that I mentioned earlier and all of the Marco Polo stuff really did contribute to the relationship between all four of these characters. There was so much character development there, and I honestly don't think we could have this much chemistry between these four characters if that other bottle episode did not happen a couple of episodes ago. And that's why I still love it. It's why it's such an integral part of this season. And yeah, also I really liked the nuances of Terry Nation's script. No stone is left unturned. Even that one fake key back in episode 3 comes back in episode 6, and that's the one that Ian gives to the fake Arbitan at the end. And just again, all the different parts of the episode working together in tandem to create this, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, a masterpiece of storytelling with this 6-part serial. And yeah, this was my favorite one, but by no means, in no way, shape, or form does that mean that the rest of the season does not hold up to this episode in particular. It's still one of my favorite seasons of Doctor Who of all time, and we've still got 3 more serials left to go. Yeah, the first one, relatively speaking, by today's standards, was pretty long, but as far as the number of serials, it was relatively shorter than most of the other 60s seasons. Yeah, like I said, we got several more serials to go, and we'll talk about them in just a minute, so stay tuned.
Hi there! Thank you for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'll see you next time!